Today, I'm speaking with Katie Sheesh, who is a business coach who I have actually worked with for, I think, about 2 years. Is it, Katie? Probably about 2 years. And Katie's helped me a lot in my business. And it's always really good to have an external pair of eyes on the decisions that you're making and the ideas that you've got for the strategy of your business. So, welcome, Katie. And maybe we can start with, could you tell us a little bit about your early career?
Thank you for having me. So the early career, well, I have been a bit of a jack of all trades actually, in terms of my career and my background. So I was one of those that when I came out of school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I had in my head that I was going to be a CEO. So long story short, is I was going to be a CEO, but of somebody else's company because I just had it in my head that I was going to do that and I was going to change the world for the people at the bottom of the chain because that's where I'd spent a lot of my time is in the bottom of the chain of corporate jobs and feeling like people up here are making decisions that don't make sense down here, and I'm going to fix that problem. So that's all I had in my head, other than wanting to be a plumber or a fireman, very specifically a fireman. So when it came to coming into work, is I was very much a I'll just do whatever jobs. I've hopped around. I've done retail. I have done a big stint as a manager in a fish and chip shop. I have done cleaning, you name it. I've probably given it a go in some respects. I was one of those that my early career was spent a lot of job hopping until I'd finished uni, and then I'd figured that I really fell in love with logistics and operations. So I came out of uni with my business degree, and I went to the postgraduate meeting to speak to all of the lovely professors about what they do. And one guy, he was teaching logistics, and he just spoke about it to me in a way that it lit up my brain. It was it's just problem solving and figuring things out, and I was like, oh, this sounds like just what I like. Give me a problem to solve. So I pursued then my role down logistics and the operations space, and that's kind of then where I got to in the first forming of building my career. And I'd say I'd spent think 3 or 4 years or so I've spent in logistics, transport, and operations in the corporate role before then becoming a business consultant as I am now.
Right. So you've had quite a varied early career with trying out various different jobs. And yeah, that's very interesting. So when you were working in your operations role, what made you want to then make that shift into business coaching, and how did you go about that?
Um, Now I never knew that I was going to end up in the role that I spent the past 6 years, and then I never realised I was going to get there. So I'd built up in the logistics space. I'd become a transport planner. I'd achieved my goal, and I sat there one day and I was like, "This is miserable." I was like, "It's a bit shit." I don't know if I can say that, but I was like, "It's." I felt like there was so much red tape, and you're trying to fit a puzzle into where it doesn't fit. Anyone that's been in logistics background will know that it's just, there's so many moving parts all of the time. And I just remember the environment not being right. And I just sat there one day and I was like, I don't think this is for me. I love the problem solving, but there feels like a lot of red tape. And I was like, I just need to figure out what's next. So my plan was to figure out what's next. And then COVID happened, 2020 happened, and then that threw me. So I'd left my corporate role as such, and I took on some temporary work. And it was still in the logistics, but I just went back to doing some admin processing as well. So I figured out what my next big plan was in life. And the big plan happened to be 2020. And it left me then without a job because that role then became not available. And I just sat there one day, and honestly, it was as simple as Googling hours and hours of these are all of the skills I've got, these are all the things that I enjoy. What career is next for me? And everything was coming out was management consulting, business consulting, going into these spaces. But obviously, in the pandemic, there was no job roles available. And yeah, I just stumbled onto, in the midst of Googling endlessly, I stumbled into this online space and that people were doing it self-employed on their own and delivering it online. And as they say, the rest is history. I was like, well, let's give it a go. And here we are 6 years later.
Wow. So you've been a business coach for 6 years now.
6 years in May.
Wow. Excellent. So that's quite a lot of experience in the business coaching arena. And I would imagine that you've coached people with businesses in like lots of different sectors, lots of different types of business, and so on. What do you enjoy most about being a business coach?
Oh, do you know, it's the two things. The variety. I really love the variety of work that comes. Like, no two businesses the same, even if they're in the same industry. They're just how they operate, their business is different, their own lifestyles and how they want to run their business are different. Like, there's just never come across two identical. So I love the variety. But what I also love is being able to help. And it's the biggest part I love about my job is like when the clients are coming to me and they're like, this is where I want to go and this is what I want to do. And we just get to sit there and unpick it. And then watching them go away and like implement and then get their results. The best part is knowing, for me especially, is like that result that they're having is going straight directly to them and their family and their quality of life. And it's not like, obviously, we all know in the corporate world, you know, you're feeding one mouth to the next mouth of like the business mouth. But actually, when I get to work with these smaller businesses, it's the direct impact it has on their entire life. And it just doesn't get more rewarding than that.
Yeah, I can imagine that's really, really rewarding. Yeah, definitely. And as you say, all the businesses are different. You're meeting lots of different people from different backgrounds and able to help all of them. So it's very rewarding. When you speak to the different business owners, do you get asked for advice in a particular area that you would say comes up time and time again, or like is there an area that you see people particularly struggle with in business, that you get asked about a lot?
I would say the first thing that comes to mind is it's the work-life balance, but I don't really believe in work-life balance. So I approach it from like a life first balance because I feel like this is different for everybody. And what that comes down to essentially is capacity. So it's around planning capacity and planning and understanding how much money they can make in the time that they have available and does that serve the life that they want to live. So that's essentially like my life first balance premise is it's about building a business that fits the life that you want to have and not what everybody else says you should have online or what you think you should have. And I'd say the biggest thing of the work I do is just looking at people's capacity, like I said, of like how many hours do I have available? How much do I want to earn? And is this business viable doing that? And then that's where then all the problems come in because we tend to sit and then we unpick it. And sometimes it's a case of increasing, we've got to increase what we're charging. It might be finding like new offers, new services to bring into the mix. It might be that, okay, like they're earning enough, but they're working more hours than they want to for the life that they want to live. So we've got to look at how we can scale that back. Is it bringing in a team member? Is it a case of, just reworking the offers to find a different way to make the money to balance everything out? And I feel like that's probably the most common thing that comes across in most businesses is that balance.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's always a challenge, isn't it? Trying to manage your business and run your life alongside it, your home life and your business life. It's like sort of two things going along in parallel.
Yeah.
Uh, so um, now you're sort of at a bit of a pivotal moment, I guess, where you've had your consulting business for, as you say, 6 years. And I understand you're moving or shifting that over to Forge Solutions, which is going to be a sort of new iteration of your consulting company, I guess. And then on the other side, you're also going onto the speaker circuit and starting to speak about resilience. So let's talk about that first. That's really interesting. So I understand, obviously, you've worked with lots of different businesses, and I guess resilience is one of the things that you're speaking with your business owners about, how they can grow their business, how they can keep going. So how did that shift sort of happen into being a resilience speaker?
So I think resilience is always something that has piqued my interest, as in what makes a person resilient and like what factors play into it. Because I think often we think of resilience comes from hardship, and it was curiosity of like, is it hardship of yeah, is it hardship that gets us to this point of like becoming resilient, or is there like other factors in play? And sorry, one second. Yeah, or is there other factors at play when it comes to resilience? So like in terms of like of business, we know as business owners we have to be resilient because things are changing all of the time. And I think this is then where my curiosity started to peak again, is I was noticing is the difference between the businesses that withstand the test of time and the businesses that don't are the ones that are resilient enough. And that resilience then turned to being like agile, because it's not just being able to, weather the storm, it's being able to navigate the storm as well. And that's, as a business owner, is what we need to like, yeah, we can make it through. But I think COVID was a prime example. It's not every business made it through because they didn't navigate it right. And I think that comes into like a different level of resilience. And how that got me kind of wanting to become a speaker in resilience is it'll be in 2023. I lost my nephew really suddenly, and it just catapulted my life as any big major life change does. And it just got me to just look at life from a different way. And I started therapy, and then therapy opened my eyes to how resilience, like how my resilience was built through my childhood and through my upbringing and the things that I faced in life. And then with my nephew passing, that was a whole different thing. And that really got me looking into resilience in the younger generations. And I've had a lot of my business owners, they all have children, they've got families, and resilience is a big concern for them. And yeah, the same thing. I'm just picking up the same thing. It's like people saying like they're struggling with like their children and how to make them more resilient. And I just got curious about resilience and wanting to explore it and the passions and just wanting to speak to people about it. And I guess that's ultimately that's kind of what's led me to then to want to be a speaker on multiple things, is that I think I've got a story to share. But then the more that I learn about resilience, both in adults, both in children, is I just think there's everybody has a lot of knowledge to share. And I'm like, if I could just collect all of that knowledge and be able to explain it in a way that makes sense, it just fills a different purpose in me that isn't just business.
Yeah, I understand that. And I think when you've got personal experience in something, it's gives you that experience to share it with other people. And as you said from the start of when you were a business coach, one of the elements you like is helping people, which obviously now this will also do. And I think it's a really key area because obviously there's a lot of talk about mental health amongst young people, particularly, but I guess that also covers any age. But with social media and what's happening in some countries now restricting the access to that, there is a lot of talk about resilience and how to build that from a young age. And as you say, you need it in your adult life, not just if you're a business owner, but in any aspect of your business life as well.
Yeah.
So, um, so can you share a little bit about Forge Solutions and where that's going to go?
Yeah, so Forge Solutions was built out of, I guess, circling back to my love of operations. So in all of my time being a business consultant and doing what I do, and being in like the coaching arena and the coaching space, is I love what I do, but I was missing getting into the mess of the business. Because obviously it's a lot of like advisory from the sidelines. And I was really miss like getting into like the nitty gritty. And there's multiple reasons of why Forge came about, but one of the big ones was I was missing the operational side of it. So I made the decision, which I felt like it took me forever. It took me less than a year, but it felt like forever to get to the point of making that decision of to scale back the consultancy and to build Forge Solutions as a company front. One, so we can go in and we can do operational support for businesses. Very similar to what I do is like we're going to go in, do a gap analysis, find the gaps in the business, and then have a two-pronged approach of like we can have an advisory or we can come in and we can do the work for you, um, which is all very, very exciting. But putting it under a company name also gives it the ability to scale it. So that was one of the other things that have come is the consulting has been under my name. And when, as we know, as business owners, that once you put your personal brand to it and your name attached to it, it's really hard to scale it past just yourself. Especially in the service industry because they're looking to work with Katie Chic because that's the name, that's the name on the front of the shop. So yeah, having Forge Solutions gives me the opportunity to scale, serves lots of my other purposes where I can go and do more work in resilience. I can bring in the team members, I can train team members. It has a whole lot of growth opportunities within it. But I think one of the other key things that I'd love to talk about of how I got to Forge, and I think it factors in that resilience factor as well, is the attachment of my name being on the business. And as part of like the therapy journey that I went on is I realized a lot of my self-worth has been attached to work. And I feel like as business owners, we live and breathe our business. But having my name attached to my business was one of the last key threads in the journey that I've gone on to healing myself is I'll always be attached to my job with my name being on there. So I made as well, I think it was a part of like and I think that was the hardest part to let go of and change it into the company name because legally it was pretty easy. Company's house, here we go, we register a company and it's done. But like internally, to pull my name away from it has been really, really difficult. And I think again that's where then that resilience factor plays in of like it's knowing that you are more than just that. And resilience, what I'm learning so far is a lot of resilience is just confidence and confidence in your own decisions and your own backing. And I feel like that was like the final piece of like this thread to try and keep it short was actually by building a company name, detaching my name from it, and having that confidence to back myself to know that like the company can build just as well without me having to be the face of it.
Hmm. That's a really interesting point because a lot of business owners do call the business after their name, and it's probably a really good place to start. Um, and I guess a lot of, like you say, business owners, the business itself becomes a large part of your identity, doesn't it? Because it's like your baby. You set it up, you're growing the business, you're working in it every day, you might employ people, and yeah, it is very attached to, I guess, an individual's character, personality, and a lot of what you do during the day, every day. So
Yeah,
I would feel like that as well. Like I'm sort of attached to marketing because that's what I do as a consultant, and I can't really imagine not doing it.
yeah.
But it's a really interesting point you make about the business name and how that wraps up with your identity.
Yeah, I think there's a big piece to it. And I think one of the things, especially from the angle that I look at Forge of being like founder optional and being exit ready by design, is when you attach your name to your business and then you attach yourself to your business then because your identity becomes it and it very easily gets blended. I'm sure we can all admit that like your identity kind of gets all blended in is then if you ever want to grow and exit, because like mine was my full name, but you get people that use their initials, they abbreviate. And I think when you get to that point where one day you're going to go, right, I'm ready to do something different, or I want to retire, I want to spend more time with my family, and all of a sudden you have this whole identity crisis because your name's attached to your business. How could somebody else run it? How can I sell it? Like how can I get out of what I've built? And I feel like that's quite a common founder trap is we
Hmm.
all get stuck in a business that we've built, especially where our names are attached to it, because our identities got blurred, and it's not a straight cut when you want to get to that point of exit, which most people don't think about until you get there. But when you get to it, you've then got years or decades of unpicking to do to remember that you are not your business.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. Like, I remember when we were having our calls, and you'd say to me that when you're the business owner in an ideal world, you should be able to sort of, I don't know, go to Spain for a month and the business will run. Not that you wouldn't check in, but if you're doing absolutely everything yourself, then you are the business, aren't you? Because nobody else can run it if you're doing all of the work, all of the leads, all of the sales, etc. And it's like, how do you build a business where you can step out of the way and it still runs efficiently and effectively, maybe with your oversight, but you're not actually doing the doing? And I found that a bit of a shift as well in my consultancy. Like, trying to shift from one to the other is quite a big step.
Yeah.
Um, so you're going to have Forge Solutions, and then obviously with your resilience, how are you going to sort of manage those dual roles, I guess? And do you think it's going to be a bit of a tricky balancing act, or how do you see that working?
I've got to laugh because I'm like, it's a very good question. And so I am notorious, like, if you've listened to this, you might not know me, but I am notoriously known for having a plan within a plan within a plan. My goal is to help people plan. So you'd think I'd have a very good plan of how I'm going to do this. But ultimately, I'm just going to figure it out as I go. And that might not be the answer that we're looking for, but it's in business, is if I've learned anything, it's nothing certain. So I don't know how quickly it's going to scale. I don't know how much it's going to need of me. So it's really hard to determine. Like, I've tried to determine, like, oh, well, I'll give this many hours to this and this many hours to this, but it just doesn't work like that. So essentially, we're going to do a bit of winging it.
Yeah,
is ultimately what we're going to do. I think we're just going to wing it and see how it goes. And what I do know is it'll be the point where friction hits, where, both are at a level where they both are demanding me. I will know then in the company, because obviously the resilience is me, is within the company, it'll be time to bring people on board if I haven't already at that point. And that's ultimately what I'll do is the company now, because I'm not attached to it and its identity, is I will train people in to take off that so I can pick up more of this, and that's generally how I intend to work it when I get there.
yeah, that sounds good. So with Forge, will it be almost like a network of experts, I guess, that and are connected to, that you can pull in, almost like a virtual team? Is that how you see it working?
I think a bit of, yeah, I think it's going to have a bit of both. So I'm going to build, because we are going to focus, a lot of it's going to be on systems and operations, most likely, is I'll have a full operational team that I think I'd like to bring in-house and put a stamp on Lincolnshire. So I am Lincolnshire based, and put a stamp on Lincolnshire as being a good place of business and not just a place of agriculture. So I think I'd like to put that stamp on it there. But then what I also want to do is I do want to bring in then, because I've met a lot of people on this journey and they don't all live in Lincolnshire, absolutely all bar about one or two. They're all over the country and they've got such great expertise. Like we've spoke about it, like with yourself, is I'm like, you've got so much to offer. Like, why would I not want you to be part of Forge? So I then have the plan is to tap into the people that I know and have them come in as like senior consultants and come and support. So Forge not only can come in and help you find like the gaps, it's like, oh, if you've got a marketing gap and we can see it, I've got the person to fix it as well. So we're becoming quite like an in-house unit of all things from like marketing to branding to finance to compliance, and having everything in-house. It's like, if you need it, great, here's the person. And we can just bring them in and get it done.
Yeah. That makes sense. It's a good way to work because you can lean on expertise like we all do when we need it. There's always somebody, if there's a gap in your own knowledge, there's somebody who you can reach out to. I think that's a good way of working. Um, so with the exit side for businesses, obviously, I guess most business owners in an ideal world, you scale, you're able to grow your business, and perhaps sell it if you can. Lots of people want to be able to achieve that. Do you see, or have you seen when you were a business coach, I guess, before, that people sort of get stuck at that point, or maybe they don't plan the exit in advance and they don't really think about it until a point where they need to exit or something happens, or maybe somebody comes and offers to buy their business and then they think, oh, I haven't really planned for that. Is that something you see, or is it more sort of structured?
No, I'd say I feel like you have two types of business owners. You've got the ones that go in with the straight up intention of I'm building this to sell. They're usually in like the tech space. In the tech space, you'll generally find those that they've got a goal, they're going to go in it, they're going to build it, they're going to sell it, they're going to move on. But the majority, so the last statistic was what, there's 5.4 million businesses just in the UK alone that are SMEs. And within that, we've even got like the micro businesses, which are a lot of who I've spent my time working with. And what I find is most people don't even think about the exit. Like they don't start a business to think about the end goal. Like I always, I always have, and I've always spoken to people like, where's the end goal? But a lot of people aren't starting a business to exit. They're starting a business to serve a purpose in their life at that moment of time. We usually find a lot of that is family life. Let's say the majority of it is family life. We need a new dynamic, so people tend to start the business, or something happens in life, something huge, and they go, why am I doing that with my life when I could be doing this? So they start for a different purpose, and they don't put that consideration into what happens when they're done. Now, for many people, people make peace and they go, well, I'll just close it down and I'll be done with it. But I see it as that as like, well, we've got a missed opportunity. Like there's a whole opportunity there of like building something, like you said, to sell it. Um, because as a business owner, if you're going, well, when I'm done, I'll close it down. If you have not planned for your retirement, or you haven't foreseen that maybe your nephew's going to die, like something drastic in your life is going to happen, you're left at a point then where it, well, like I was, is like, oh, well, I either have to go through or what's next? I think if you haven't made that plan for what's next and you haven't set yourself up for that, what I do find with some business owners is then they're stuck with a business they no longer love and they can't get out of it because it's paying the bills and it's doing all of the things it needs to do, and they haven't figured out what they do after this.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure that's quite common. Um, but I think, like you say, it could be a part of maybe families like future financial planning, if they're able to sell it after a few years. And there might be a natural point where people have been in business, they've been in the thick of it, uh, and it gets to a point where they don't want to run the business anymore. So I suppose often people used to maybe pass it down to their children or something like that. But if you can create an exit strategy that works, um, for you and your family, and the business can carry on, that's a good win-win for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's looking at those options, isn't it? I always say this founder optionality and being exit ready by design, it's not just about selling the business. Like you said there, it might be that it gets passed down to family. And actually, are you building something that a family member wants to take on and a legacy that they want to take on and then build? Because again, this is all about resilience. Like as business owners, we need to be resilient, we need to be adapting. And what we find is, again, we'll build a business and it could be a business that's been in the family for like 50, 60 years. And you want to pass it down, but if you haven't, like, let's say, kept up with technology in the times, then the people coming under you might go, well, that just feels like a whole lot of effort to fix. Like, oh, do I even want it? Like, it doesn't look shiny enough for them. Like there's all of these factors that come into play, or like you said, is what if that path isn't for them? Have you got a successor, like a manager that could then come in and take over the role that you played? And it means that the business could still be yours, but you don't have to be the front and center of the business. You can still be a director of the business behind the scenes. You can still be doing some guiding. There's so many options And I feel like we do ourselves a disservice if we just shut them down,
Hmm.
unless
Yeah,
they were always intended for that. Like some businesses are intended to serve a purpose for a short period of time, but you've
yeah,
generally accepted that. But a lot of these people, they build amazing businesses and they get to that point in life where they don't want it and they don't know what else to do. And that was part of my building of Forge was like, well, let's go in and fix that.
yeah. I think you're going to have an exciting time doing that because it sounds like something that an awful lot of business owners either haven't thought about it or they have thought about it, but they need some guidance. And then if you're actually looking at the actual exit strategy and how that's going to work, I think it'll be fascinating across lots of different sectors.
Yeah.
So, thinking back to your business coaching days, what would be your piece of advice? Because I'm sure there's lots of people, around the country, wherever they are based, who want to start their own business, have thought about doing it, but they just are scared or they just don't know how to, what to do first. What would you advise them?
I think there's several things that ultimately I want to say just have the audacity to go out and do it. Like that's really what I want to like hammer through, but it's not very practical. It's like, yeah, just go do it because that's what everybody says. And you go, well, it's not that simple. But the reality is it is that simple. Like if you've got an idea for a business and you've been thinking about it for ages and you want to get it up and running, there is absolutely zero risk to getting curious. There is zero risk to starting up. Like until it makes £1,000, you don't really need to do anything about it. Like until it's making money, there's no. If you're worried about like, oh, like, I've got to legally set up a business and all of these things, is until it makes money, that's not really a problem. Like the bare bones is, you get some insurance. If you're whatever it is you're serving is, make sure you've got your business insurance so you're covered. But other than that, like there's nothing major that is going to cause any big detrimental harm. Obviously, it depends what business you're building, but ultimately, you can be curious. And this is what I want you to take away from it is you can get curious, you can look, you can start an Instagram page, you could start a Facebook page, set yourself up on LinkedIn. You could get curious and build a website. You don't have to do anything with it. It's like what we're holding ourselves back from taking an action that ultimately it may go somewhere and it may not. Like if you build a website and you decide, oh, actually, no, this I don't really want to run this business, then whatever, it just goes in the bin. You set up a page, you can close it down. You set up a business, you can close it down. But you never know, it might just work out. And there's so much help and support out there. Like if I have learned anything, there's so many people in my early days were willing to help. Like those that have been in similar positions were willing to help. And there's so much out there now, like the NatWest Accelerator, that's out there. And obviously that's loads of business help and advice on there. I do mentoring through there. So they have a thing called Digital Boost, which I came across last year. And I just offer out some free mentoring sessions on there. And there's hundreds and I think probably thousands of mentors on there. And you can just book and get free advice and again, figure it out and just have a go at things. And yeah, I think the advice is it's just having the audacity to go for it and knowing that the worst thing that can possibly happen is nothing happens. And that's not that scary.
Yeah. And if you don't try it, then it's definitely not going to work because you haven't
Yeah.
begun anything, I guess. Um, I feel like the younger generation are really, taking this on board. And we've got all the technology now. We've got Instagram that you mentioned, TikTok, websites are much easier to build with Squarespace and all those different products that make things simpler. So it's much easier to get yourself established and have like a brand presence and credibility online where, 10, 20 years ago, that would have been much more difficult and probably much more expensive as well.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely would have been. And I think that's one of the perks of this whole online world that now exists is the opportunity, like the barrier to entry is so low that anybody can get in. Because before, it's like, well, how can I get to networking when I'm running my business, and oh, I'm not running my business. I've got my day job, and I'm doing all of these things. And he's like, oh, how do I get started? But now it's like in your spare time, here you go, throw it out. If you've got some money, you can pay somebody to do it for you. Like the barrier to entry for a business now is just the bar is so low. Like all you have to do is do something. And like I said, is if you do nothing, as I always say, like if nothing changes, nothing changes. But if
Yeah.
you've got this idea for a business, is just get curious and at very little just ask yourself like, okay, if I've got this business idea and let's say I was going to pursue it and have a nosy, he's like, what's the first thing I'd need to do? And just do that. Like, don't think about, oh my God, how do I leave my full-time job and run this business? Because it's probably a few years away before you get there. And in
Yeah.
actual fact of like, okay, like if I just got curious about starting this business, what would I need to know? What do I need to go and look at? What do I need to go and learn? And I can tell you that before you know it, you'll have a business.
You'll have a business. Yeah. I think that's a good point. You can have a full-time role and also be looking into something else. And you could spend like a couple of hours just, you know, trying something, building it slowly in the background. You don't just have to sort of leave your job immediately. That's a big scary thing to do for people. But you can build it in parallel.
Yeah, and it's one thing, it's a piece of advice I give to like a lot of my clients, especially those that are in full-time work, is I think we hear a lot about people start a business and then they leave their full-time job 2 weeks later and then they're millionaires. And the reality is business does not work that way. I really wish I could tell you it did, but if it did, I wouldn't be sat in my office in my house. I'd probably be somewhere on holidays, a rich millionaire. Business doesn't work in that way of it being this whole overnight thing. And one thing I say to everybody is get your business up and running, get some money in, and make that money consistently for at least 6 months before you consider even leaving your job. Is like your business needs to have made a consistent revenue that can pay. So there's two caveats here of like it needs to be able to pay for your living needs. So not this desirable want. Is like to pay the bills, what is the bare bottom line that I have to contribute to make sure I have a roof over my head and food on the table? Aim just there. Don't aim for the salary you're on now because that's that. As business owners, it's a big jump, especially if you are older and you've established yourself a career. Like, let's face it, you won't be on minimum wage. You're probably above minimum wage at this point. So let's not aim for the salary you had to start with. Let's aim to put food on the table and a roof over the head. And already you'll go, well, the barrier to entry is just lowered a lot. It's a fraction of what it was. And now aim to make that and then aim to make that consistently for 6 months. And if you know that you can do that, you know that this business is viable because it can pay the bills. And if it can pay the bills, you're already one step. And then we just build on that. And it really is that easy. So building on it's really easy. It's getting that initial steady income that's the hardest part.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely right. Yeah. I think when you look online, it's easy to think oh, everyone's a billionaire these days. You look at Instagram and some of the big businesses and the tech and this and that, and you just think, oh yeah, everyone's a billionaire. All these celebrities who've made loads of money. But the reality is, for most business owners, they're not billionaires. They're probably not millionaires. They're probably running a business that pays them a salary effectively, as you say, and they're enjoying running the business, doing the service or building the products that they enjoy doing, and you get a lot out of it. But you're not going to necessarily make billions. If you do,
Yeah.
that's great.
Yeah, and that's in that there's the option to do that. But if we speaking from experience, most business owners I speak to, they want to earn enough money to live and a bit on top that they don't feel the pressure. And so they can go on a few holidays. Like they want enough. And everybody's enough is different. But I've yet to meet a person who told me their enough is 7 million. Like their enough is usually three or £4,000 is enough to live the lifestyle and have the luxuries and get there. Like not very many are like, okay, I need 7 million to sustain this lifestyle I want. Like great, if we've got it, wonderful. We get to live a very rich life. Um, but the reality for most people is it's not that.
Mm.
And I think when you get into running a business and you have the freedom and the flexibility, because you may look at this if you're employed from an employed point of view and go like, why would anybody want to be a business owner? You work 24/7. But we get to choose when we work. And I think that's what makes the difference is it's that life first. It's like we become very rich in life that I think for a lot of business owners, we realize like the money doesn't matter as much. And what matters is the fact that they can go and pick the kids up. For example, you can go for a swim every day, beginning of the day, middle of the day. Like you get to go for a swim. Like you can't do that in a job role where you're confined to be there 9 to 5. And if you are in a business where you're like, well, I run a cafe and I have to be in the business every day because it has to open, is consider that factor of going back to being founder optional, of like, that doesn't need to be your role. Like, your role is to run the business. And if you want to, obviously run the day to day, the cafe, great. But if you're sat here like scrunching your nose and going, that's not possible for my business, is challenge yourself of like, but could somebody fulfill that role? And the chances are they can, because somebody can fulfill any role in business.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important because obviously we spoke about money, but for me as well, it's obviously not just about that. And I think that flexibility is definitely key. Being able to make your own decisions, being able to work the hours that you want to work. You know, you might not do 9 to 5. You might start later, finish earlier, or start earlier, or take Fridays off, or all these different flexible options. For me, was one of the reasons that I wanted to have my own business because yeah, it just gives you flexibility and I guess control over your own time.
Yeah, absolutely. Like that, it becomes the biggest blessing when you hit tragedy in life. I realized that with like what happened is all of my clients waited. They was all very happy. It was like, take the time that you need. And I took 6 weeks. I didn't take, a huge mass amount of time, because I felt that need to come back. But I got to take 6 weeks to be there for my family, to be there for myself, to just take the time. And then on the other hand, those people in the families where they're getting phone calls are like, are you back at work tomorrow? And in the light of a tragedy, like the thought that, like I couldn't imagine now having to answer to that when big life things are happening.
Yeah,
And yeah, so I just think there's so many blessings, isn't there, really,
lots
to
of benefits. Yeah,
running a business.
absolutely. Yeah, so many benefits. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And it's a journey, isn't it? You learn along the way, so it's never boring.
Yeah, yeah, never a boring day as a business owner.
Excellent. So I could talk to you all day, by the way, um, but we'll wrap up. So where can people find you, Katie?
Okay, well, predominantly I spend my time now on LinkedIn. So if you just search Katie Chic, it's a very unique name. So once you've learned how to spell it, I'm easy to find. And I spend a fair bit of time on LinkedIn. If you like the personal brand, you like the lifestyle stuff, you'll find me on Instagram, very true millennial, stick to the platforms that I know. But in terms of business, Forge Solutions, we spend a lot of time over on LinkedIn. Website is up and running as well. And yeah, basically, if you search my name, you'll find me. And I love a good, as you can tell, I love a good conversation.
So it's going to be Forge Solutions Limited, is it?
So searching will be for just Forge Solutions,
Dot
and you'll
com.
find me across the platforms.
Yeah, and it's FORJ.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, it's so lovely to chat with you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.